Hello and welcome to all our viewers to episode number 3 of Rugby's Social Corner. It's a show in which we cover everything that's grabbing the headlines in Indian rugby, Asia rugby and world rugby. Keeping with tradition, we'll get underway with Indian rugby. Team India and Team Singapore squared off in rugby battle it out, a series of 3 trivia battles in which Team Singapore emerged victorious by 2 battles to 1. Full episodes of all 3 battles are published for viewing on Rugby India's social media platforms. On Children's Day, Rugby India launched a Rugby for Change rehabilitation program in the Children in Need of Care and Protection home in Delhi. The home safeguards abandoned children who've been victims of abuse and exploitation. The program aims at using rugby as a platform to provide a support system to bring about positive change. And we'll conclude the India Rugby segment of this episode with Rugby India Development Manager Saifullah Khan, who was recently appointed as a member on the elite UNESCO Youth and Sport Task Force. Moving on to Asia Rugby. The Asia Rugby Unstoppables campaign Top 32 was announced recently, and the good news for India is that Sandhya Rai has been selected to be a part of this elite list of women in rugby, which also means that a very inspirational story will be shared with the entire continent of Asia. Here's wishing Sandhya all the very best, as Asia Rugby will soon select the top 15 from this short list of 32. Asia Rugby has announced its international competitions calendar for 2021, and great news if you're an Indian fan, as these competitions will see the Indian national teams being back in full swing. Women in rugby have been hitting one milestone after another, and the trend continues in the form of rugby legend Ada Milby being appointed president of the Philippines Rugby Football Union after having served as general secretary of the union for 8 years. As the new head, Milby said that one of her priorities is to bring Filipino players back to the field sometime in the second quarter of 2021 in accordance with safety protocol. She's also emphasized the need to continue focusing on bridging the gender divide in rugby. On to the last segment of the show, which concerns World Rugby. It's been a very exciting time for World Rugby as they hosted the official draw for the next 2 World Cups. The women's, which will be held in New Zealand next year, and the men's, which will take place in France in 2023. Here are your pools for both competitions. Some cracking matchups in the offing as the women's edition sees holders and hosts New Zealand in a group that also features Australia. But that's not it. Neighbours Canada and USA have been drawn together as well. France 2023 will see the hosts take on the mighty All Blacks, while defending champion South Africa find themselves in the same pool as Ireland and Scotland. It's deja vu for Wales, Australia and Fiji as they go head-to-head in the same pool for the 3rd consecutive time. The World Rugby Awards 2020 were held on the 7th of December, and the following individual and team awards were presented. Richie McCaw of New Zealand won the Men's 15th Player of the Decade. The Women's 15th Player of the Decade went to Jessie Tremollier of France. Jerry Tuwai of Fiji won the Men's 7th Player of the Decade. Portia Woodman of New Zealand was presented the Women's 7th Player of the Decade. Jerry Heaslip of Ireland won the Men's 15th Try of the Decade. Portia Woodman of New Zealand grabbed another award in the form of the Women's 15th Try of the Decade. And the following were deemed the Women's 15s and the Men's 15s Teams of the Decade respectively. And we'll conclude proceedings with Nigel Owens, the most famous rugby referee and arguably the greatest of all time, who was called time on a glittering 17-year international career that saw him referee 100 Test matches and 4 Rugby World Cups. Here's wishing Nigel all the very best in the next phase of his life. 2020 has been a year that's been laced with uncertainty and turbulence, but despite these very testing times, your support has been anything but uncertain. We thank you wholeheartedly for all your support throughout 2020, and we look forward to the same in 2021 as well. Here's wishing all of you a very happy new year. Until next time, stay safe, take care, and cheers.